Hello, and welcome to the Two Real Cinema Club. I'm James Rosica.
And I'm Andres Lorente. And at Two Real Cinema Club, we watch two movies, always one old and one new, and then we draw some comparisons between the two. This week we're going to talk about Everyone in the Matrix. Oops, that's... I read my title note. Sorry, oops. We're going to talk about everything, everywhere, all at once. Do you want to restart? Yeah, we have to restart.
No, that's good. No, that's good. I'm keeping that in. That's good.
All right.
I'm keeping that.
Everything, everywhere, all at once, which features Michelle Yeoh, and then we also looked at The Matrix from 1999 with the great Keanu Reeves, great friend of the pod here. So we look forward to talking about his work again.
We've already waxed lyrical about him already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I want to start out, I want to address the controversy immediately. I was guilty of using a couple of expletives in the last episode. We heard from someone, Spotify or something like that. So I am not going to say at all during this show today. I just said it.
Oh, that's another 20 minutes of editing for me to do it.
Oh, Jimmy, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I think we should pass it over to you, the clean-mouthed one.
Right, okay.
And you're going to talk about everything, everywhere, all at once.
I'm going to try and keep it clean. So, Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is this year's big A24 film. In fact, I think as of the pod at the moment, this is their highest-grossing international film ever. Wow. So A24, new kind of indie darling producers. I say new; they've been around for 10 years or more, I think.
Yeah,
production company started by John Hodges, who I for a long time confused with John Hodge, who is the UK screenwriter of Trainspotting. Oh. So John Hodges, American producer. A24 produced a bunch of medium to low budget movies, and this is their kind of biggest breakout hit so far. So directed by two guys, Daniel Scheinert and Daniel Kwan, who work together under the name of Daniels. Mm-hmm. I see a pattern there. This is their second feature. They made Swiss Army Man a few years ago. Did you see that? I did not.
I did not. Nope.
So kind of little kind of very small absurdist comedy about a man and a corpse, as far as I can tell from the with Daniel Radcliffe playing the corpse. As far as I can tell from the Wikipedia summary, but I haven't seen it, haven't come across it. So after that feature, they've moved up into the big leagues. This film now produced by the Russo brothers, stars Michelle Yeoh, then Ke Huy Quan, Stephanie Su, Jamie Lee Curtis, James Hong. So great American Chinese cast. Fantastic to see Ke Huy Quan in it, because I had to look him afterwards, thinking, I've never seen this guy in anything. This is the guy who played Short Round in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Who apparently, according to the internet, he has had no work since 2002.
Wow.
And now has come back in this, and he's fantastic in this. So the story is about Evelyn, a woman in her 50s. She's preparing her taxes for audit. She runs a not very successful laundromat. She's got tax problems. It's her father's birthday, and the controlling, unpleasant elderly father is turned up so his daughter can celebrate him. She's coming to terms with her daughter being gay. Her husband wants a divorce. Everything in her life is falling apart. And then when they go to the IRS with all of their tax forms to submit for the audit, her husband tells her that he is actually a visitor from another parallel universe, and he needs Evelyn to summon all her energy to combat Jopo Tupaki, who is an evil force in his universe that's created something that will destroy everything. And to start with, Evelyn doesn't believe him, because why would you? But as things become crazier and crazier, she learns to jump between parallel universes. She draws skills from her many, many other parallel selves to confront Jopo Tupaki, who it turns out is a manifestation of her own daughter. And the family fights it out to try and save the universe. This is a remarkable, extraordinary, absurdist film, bursting with energy, bursting with ideas, never boring for a moment. I must say, left me quite breathless. Did you feel the same watching this film?
No.
No.
No, I agree with you on the energy for sure. And it's funny, I loved and hated this film at the same time, quite passionately. I love there were a couple of ideas in this film that I really love. And I just felt like the way they were delivered for me didn't work because this is an attention deficit generation film. So it's not that
Yeah.
I don't think you're really supposed to follow it, and I was trying to follow it, and it's two different realities of logic, so I couldn't really relate to it. I sat through it. I definitely got through the whole film. I was in the theater, so big screen and all that. I think there are a lot of images and there's a lot of talking. It's this rare film that has a little bit too much dialogue and too many pictures for me. Usually something's just too talky or something's just like so stuck on its visual storytelling that it doesn't get the characters or their emotions they're thinking into. It's just flashy pictures, and this one sort of had both. There were a lot of there's a lot of editing in this film. There are tons of images. There are tons of little streams through the multiverse to give you different pieces of story, but I live in an attention deficit household. I mean, we've got a lot of it here, so it's kind of my everyday living, and I find it enervating to a certain extent. And that opening scene, I know it was supposed to do this, but it was so tense, and there was, as you just said, there's so much crap happening at the same time that I really started to feel anxious. I get anxious around that much unfocused energy, and that's exactly how I was supposed to feel. I got that, so I made it through the first 10 minutes or so, but it set me off edge. I mean, my favorite scenes in this film are when these two rocks talk. One rock talking to another one. I thought that was the best stuff. And I realized it just came to this place where, we're not rushing around trying to give you too much information. We don't have people talking at you about all these big ideas that don't really make a realistic conversation. So it had a little bit too much dialogue and just definitely too many images for me. But everybody else loves it. It's really, really super fresh on Rotten Tomatoes and all that. So I know that I'm probably missing something, but it's just not for my generation, I don't think, or my mindset somehow.
So these guys who directed it, the Daniels guys, surprise, surprise, have come up through the pop video circuit.
Yeah.
And absolutely, you can tell because this movie is like a 120-minute pop video with as many cuts and as many costume changes, and as many ideas bursting out of the screen at you. And I suppose that is fun for 3 minutes. It does become kind of exhausting after 2 hours.
Yeah.
There is the scene where the two characters just exist as rocks, and the dialogue there is just be a rock. And I agree there are other slow moments as well. Amongst the many universes that the characters visit during the film, one of them is the Wong Kar-wai universe, isn't it? Where Evelyn has become like a successful movie star, and she meets her husband, who's become a successful businessman, and things are kind of very sedate and slow and a little bit soft focus. And it's all explicitly taken straight out of In the Mood for Love. So it does sometimes slow down and catch its breath. It's not utterly frenetic all of the time, just 95% of the time. But I'm sure there will be plenty of people for whom that really kind of hits the nail on the head. For some people, a lot of films contain too much talking and not enough action and not enough costume changes, and there will be an audience for this movie, and people will be pleased by it. I agree. I found it exhausting, but not unwatchable. I was still able to drill down and get into the characters and kind of appreciate the story. I think the main objection, the main problem I have about it actually is that this kind of many-layered story, which is it's fairly explicitly a metaphor for the struggles of being a parent or of being an adult woman. Like quite early on in the movie, Jamie Lee Curtis, who's Deirdre, this very sort of dour IRS auditor, she looks at Evelyn and she says, you seem to be involved in so many businesses. You're a businesswoman, but also you're a singer, and you're telling me you're a chef, and you're a novelist, and you're a teacher, and you're a singing coach, and you're a massage technician. She was saying, how can you be all these things? And it's very clear that what the film is pointing out. It's like that joke about what's it like being a mother? You have to do all of these jobs, and the pay is awful. This is what she's describing is the shape of contemporary motherhood,
Yeah.
or of being a late middle-aged woman, being the kind of person who traditionally has been very invisible to cinema. And here, Jamie Lee Curtis, cleverly identifies in a single line of dialogue what the thrust of the film is, which is that, when you're a woman and a mother, you are required to play all of these roles, and they're all inside you. My objection is that although the film is very successful as a metaphor and it enjoys all those layers and those levels, I don't think the film can also exist outside the space of a metaphor. It presents itself as a story about combat that was going to save or destroy the universe and this kind of great clash of multiverses. And none of that really kind of makes any sense. The film does make sense when it's a metaphor, but it doesn't exist outside of being a metaphor. And so I think the fact that the story doesn't function on a straightforward, representative, face value level kind of diminishes the message that you take away from it. You aren't allowed to go away from the film and realize, hey, not only was there a clever film about the multiverse and about this kind of great battle for supremacy, but also it was a kind of reflection on modern life. It doesn't give you the breathing space to make that discovery for yourself. It hits you in the face with it directly as often as it can, which I thought was a missed opportunity. I thought with a few tweaks and maybe a little bit more restraint, it could have got away with having a foot in both camps, with being the metaphor and also being a properly functional tale that actually makes sense without you realizing that it's a metaphor.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think you really hit the nail on the head there. And for me, I felt like I had to go back afterwards thinking about it to drill in and find the ideas that I really loved. And I really did love some things in here. I really liked this idea that we're different people at different times. And when we're surrounded by different people, they bring out different things in us. So we're just constantly changing as humans. And I liked that juxtaposed against the really banal day-to-day in the laundromat. There's this exciting world that she sort of lived parts of them. She was different people at different times, or could be in other multiverses or universes. She'd be different. And I liked that idea a lot. I also love there's something very existentialist about it, and this is probably saying way more than the filmmakers would invest in it themselves, but just each little choice and action exerts some sort of different outcome, and circumstances are always playing enormous roles in our life, and I really liked that. But there is this sort of central nihilism too in the themes too. I think there are two things. Like, you want the truth. I think she says this to her. Does her daughter say this to her, or vice versa? You want the truth? Nothing matters. I mean, that's kind of a big. Even though there's all this crap going on, ultimately it's nothingness, and I don't think they're really going to change anything. And I think when there are rocks, they say we're all small and stupid. So there's this sort of there's this. I think there's nihilism in there. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I think for me the biggest thing is that I had to go back and almost retro-engineer my own ideas about the film, because the delivery system was so wrong for me. It's just all this, the shortcuts, the quick action, a lot of the fighting I find pointless. So it's like, how do I want it? And I had this heroin metaphor where, do I want to inject myself? No. Do I want to chase the dragon? No. Or do I want the suppository? Yes, I want the slow-acting suppository. That's how I need my stories, especially. So if they are trying to attack big ideas, I want it to come out really directly from the filmmakers. I don't want to do all the work to try and find my own themes in it. I mean, I guess that's part of film, is trying to make me think, but I don't want to think that much when I've got all this crap just being cut and cut and cut before my eyes again and again. So it was just the way that the information came to me. I think it would have, as you said, restraint. I think a bit more restraint, I would have taken away a lot more from this film, and I would have loved it. As it was, I felt like it was definitely sort of the kind of work that Baz Luhrmann does. Another sort of, he's got these big projects, these big ideas, but he's a video maker. He makes music videos, which are supposed to be short and pointless, I think. So when you take 2 hours and 10 minutes of my time and you're going to just zap me with that again and again, it's just, nothing's going to stick. I think that's the ultimate thing, is you want everything to work, and as a result, almost nothing works.
I mean, I see what you mean about the nihilism in the film.
Yeah.
I felt that the nihilism was kind of a bit insincere. It felt a little bit like kind of teenage edgelord writing on Reddit, being a bit of a nihilist, because it's offered as a
solution. I agree. It just didn't.
But then it's withdrawn again very quickly, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the end, the daughter, says her goodbyes to the mother and says, that's it. I'm going to head off into the black hole of nothingness. And she only makes it in there for 4 or 5 seconds before the mother then just kind of grabs and yanks her back out again.
Yeah.
And inevitably that's the destiny of the story, and that's the story beat that has to happen. But at no point do you sincerely feel that she's really going to get dragged down by the nihilism, or that she's going to end up in the black hole and we're going to never see her again. It feels a little bit like kind of showy nihilism. It's nihilism on a t-shirt to show off to your friends before going to bed early. Some of the outstanding things about the film, I must say, are things like I think it's going to be a shoo-in for the costume and makeup Oscars.
Yeah,
because just not only outstanding makeup and costumes, but just so goddamn much of it.
Yeah.
So many costume changes, and so many fantastical, amazing makeup jobs. Very inventive and fantastic. Doing costume and makeup on this film must have been a blast, because there was just so much to deal with.
Yeah.
It surprised me a little bit. Did you see how much this film was made for?
I did not. I don't think so.
Would you like to guess?
I'm going to say 60 million, something like that.
Well, so the quoted figure that they say publicly is 25 million.
Wow.
And I read that, and I feel like this film simultaneously looks like it cost a lot more and a lot less.
Yeah.
There are so many setups and so many tiny micro scenes in different moments. There's one scene where Evelyn and Joy, the daughter, are fighting it out in a courtroom somewhere. And it lasts for 2 seconds and there's no dialogue, but they had to go to a courtroom and set up and do the lights and have all that set up just for this 2 seconds, just for 50 frames of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So many setups like that must be exhausting. I'm not surprised that they spent so much time and money on it. But on the other hand, so much of the film feels lo-fi, I think is the word. Like the earpieces that they wear and the kind of the gooky glasses with lights on and the kind of the electronic displays, and the fact that pretty much most of the action all happens in a single building. Everything happens in that IRS building. Yeah. Kind of makes it feel like if you told me they made them film for $2 million, I would have believed you.
Okay, sure.
It feels like it could be one or the other.
I mean, that's very low for a film of that that size, and it's obviously going to make a lot of money.
I suppose so. Yeah, but so it's not a tremendously starry cast, and I can imagine Jamie Lee Curtis doing it for for scale because it's a fun project to be involved in.
Yeah, no super high A-listers who are used to making $20 million a film, because certain actors will make that much alone on a film.
Yeah, exactly.
There are just so many moments that sometimes I thought, did they just shoot a lot of stuff and then sort of put the story back together after the fact, or how much of that is like really scripted? And because there felt like there were a lot of extraneous things. Some of them were really funny or wonderful, but the rubber finger stuff didn't make a lot of sense to me. Rakakuni was clever, but these are things that ultimately over the course of the film they start to eat up some time. I mean, those are they probably spent 3 or 4 minutes at least on rubber fingers. Rakakuni maybe a little bit more than that. Eating lipstick and strange things, strange items to get back into the multiverse. There are a lot of. I mean, I love ridiculousness. I love farce and absurdity, but it didn't feel like a lot of it had purpose for me. And I think more time really spent on hammering down on some of their biggest themes and some of their bigger relationships. It's hard to get like a relationship between two characters when they're constantly changing. I think that's a real struggle, because you're really looking at one actress who's playing 4 or 5 different versions of herself, and the daughter has a different personality in each multiverse. So I think as a result, the story just sort of slips away from you because there's no one actor, one real character that you're latching onto for the whole journey. And
that's just the problem with having such an inventive project. An inventive script is, you can fill it with invention, but the inventions don't necessarily always feel relevant. Yeah. And, it's that R word again, isn't it? It's the restraint to cut away your favorite ideas. Isn't that what Dr. Johnson once said? He said, if you ever write a sentence of which you are truly proud, I hope you will have the good sense to cross it out. Yeah. It's about, ideas is great, but you need to know which ones to cut out. Yeah. there was a little bit too much dildo-based combat for my taste.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for. Okay. How did I not write that down? Because remember, we were talking about the Northman. I was saying not enough dildo or penis, and in this film there was too much.
Too much.
It's funny for a moment. It's definitely funny for a moment, but when again, it's just dialing it back and saying, okay, 2 seconds of the dildo's enough. 15, 20 seconds, probably too much.
It gives it that sort of pop music feel again, isn't it? You can imagine, oh yeah, I bet there would be like a pop video of 3 minutes of people fighting with dildos. And, that would be a really outrageous, hilarious pop video. Yeah, and we get loads of press. That would be great. Yeah. But 4 minutes of dildo fighting sandwiched into a feature film is just it's 3 minutes and 30 seconds too much.
Exactly. And it is a 2-hour, 20-minute film, so it's not a short film. I think it could have been 145 and been a classic, just kind of cut down, streamlined, and really refined. But it starts to show some fat on the bone. I think at about that point, the 145 point or so.
It's funny. It's too much of too much, isn't it? Yeah. It's like eating too many cakes, and each of the cakes has 25 layers. Yeah. You go, okay, maybe I could eat one of those cakes, or I could eat a couple of simple cakes. But when you give me 25 cakes and each cake has so much icing, it becomes exhausting.
That's how I felt.
But as you say, maybe there is a younger, less patient audience for whom this hits the mark.
Yeah, or an audience that is now used to that level of of a barrage of images. I think that's part of it as well.
It is the TikTok feature film. That's what we've discovered,
But I have to say that of 2 of the ADD people in my house, one's 50-something years old and one is 20. They loved it.
Right.
They loved it. So I think it does, I think, and I didn't talk to them a lot about it because I didn't want to do that before I did the pod, but I might go back and talk to them about it a little bit more if they remember. They also wouldn't remember a damn thing. That's the other thing. That's the ADD thing. So it's great. These films are great for people who have no memory.
I must say, there's one film that this movie really reminded me of, with the kind of the scenes where they're scurrying around office cubicles, and the scenes where characters are taking over bodies, and the scenes where they learn kung fu overnight. There's a lot in this film that draws from The Matrix. Yeah. So it's fascinating to see that the effect of The Matrix is still echoing down the halls of cinema 23 years after it was made. Why don't we have a break, and we'll come back then and we'll talk about the mother of this film, The Matrix, and see whether we can spot the joins. Join us then.
And we are back after Jimmy's silky smooth transition from Everyone Everywhere All at Once into The Matrix. Speaking of The Matrix as being perhaps a parent or a step-parent of the previous film. The Matrix was released in 1999. I think it was in March of 1999. I was living in Colorado at the time, and the shooting at Columbine High School happened weeks later, and the 2 teens had dressed up with long jackets, and they had just seen that film dozens of times before they killed, I think, 13 people and themselves. So at the time, I did see it after that event. It was a little bit shocking because I was working in a school at the same time as well. So it hit pretty hard. It was controversial, but I think the only time I saw this film was in the theater. And honestly, I probably would not have seen it again if you hadn't paired it so beautifully with the previous film. But I do remember, thinking, there's some ground being broken here, and it was done by the Wachowski brothers at the time, Larry and Andy, who are now Lana and Lily Wachowski. Right. I remember reading a lot about them, but they weren't doing interviews at all. And I remember that they were painters. They were sort of like construction people and painters at the time, but they had been working on these scripts for lots and lots of time. I think really imbuing it with lots of myth and religion. There's tons of religion in this film that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So it came out in 1999. Of course, it is the film of Neo, who's the one. It starts out with people talking about Neo as being the one. Trinity is played by, is it Kate Moss? I always forget my Moss.
Carrie Ann Moss.
Carrie Ann Moss, that's right. So much moss.
Yes, Kate Moss's older sister.
Elizabeth
That's right.
Moss. Okay. She plays Trinity, a woman who's hacking and kicking ass in some office building when Hugo Weaving, who is Agent Smith, sneaks in creepily because apparently she's doing something bad in their world, hacking into the system, and she's part of a revolutionary group headed by Morpheus, played by Lawrence Fishburne. I think one of the things that attracts everybody or impresses everyone immediately is the photographic style. It's some sort of slow motion or stopgap visual style. I think I read somewhere they'd called it something bullet
Time.
bullet time filming.
Photography,
So it's jumpy. It was very eye-catching at the time. We've seen it since then, and I think it has influenced a lot of commercial directors and filmmakers since. Neo, Keanu Reeves' character, is inside the Matrix, but he doesn't know it. He's told to follow the White Rabbit, and that takes him to a nightclub where he meets Trinity, who's obviously a hacker, and I think Neo's some sort of hacker as well. And she brings him along, which through a lot of ponderous dialogue, and it's very slow moving compared to the whole action ethos of the film. You get some of these dialogue scenes that are really kind of on the nose and corny in places. We'll talk about some of the final dialogue pieces that were just hard to swallow, but they talk in this bar, and she's trying to get him into Morpheus's group of rebels, and Morpheus sort of earns his trust by helping Neo get out of he sort of navigates himself right out of out of trouble, but into the hands of Agent Smith. And the Smith character, you could say he's a number of characters. He's sort of an artificial intelligence, like just a characterization of bad guys, though. This really struck me as just over the top. They've got the glasses, the earpieces, the stilted way of speaking, and they are very menacing. And of course, but I think their actions would be much more menacing than their appearance. Like when Neo loses his mouth, and they put this probe into his body so that they can trace him. That stuff is great, but I think it's undercut.
Proper body horror, isn't it?
What's that?
Yeah. Proper body horror, those sequences.
That stuff's great, and I think it's undercut by the just ridiculousness of the Agent Smith's characters and his twins, and you never meet really the other ones. So he knows now. Neo sort of knows that there's something really nefarious about this Matrix thing, and that Morpheus and Trinity and his team or their team can show him about the Matrix. And there's a lot of this talk about you are a slave and you need to fight for your freedom sort of language, but they really see him as being really a Christ figure who can sort of save them from the Matrix and these intelligence agents. The blue pill and the red pill, Morpheus gives him a choice. I'm not sure what would really happen if I don't know why he needs to eat a pill. Maybe you can explain this to me, but he's offered the chance to like live in the Matrix blissfully by eating the blue pill, but I think he could just not eat the pill and still live in the Matrix. That was the thing.
Yeah, it's true.
Or he can eat the red pill and help all of humankind, or what exists of it. And this is Keanu Reeves just a few years after he kicked Dennis Hopper's ass in Speed. He's not going to eat the blue pill. We know that. He's going to eat the red pill and go kick ass. And he literally walks through a door into the sort of second act and meeting new characters as soon as he's eaten that red pill. Jimmy, any take on that? The blue pill, red pill, does it matter? I mean, the red pill seemed to have sent him into a brief coma or something like that so that he could recover from the Matrix life, and then he begins this massive training session to become an ass kicker. What was your take on that?
There's a kind of like pseudo-scientific explanation, isn't it? About, the red pill will stabilize your brainwaves so that we can start a trace or something. It's all kind of sci-fi mumbo-jumbo. There's one of the modern interpretation or reinterpretations of the Matrix is that it's about the trans experience, isn't it? And supposedly the red pill is the same color as the estrogen therapy, I think, that some trans people take, or it might be testosterone, something. But I think some people have drawn a parallel there. They're saying, well, that's the reason why it's a red pill. Red pilling has become, such a popular meme now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's become a kind of a byword for uncovering a hidden truth, which has been used by all sorts of groups. The kind of the men going their own way kind of movement have sort of co-opted this red pill idea, and it's a synonym for going down the YouTube rabbit hole and becoming radicalized. So it's one of those ideas. I think it's such a clear little visual moment that it's easy to co-opt, isn't it,
Yep.
by kind of any ideology.
Yeah.
It's these guys should be doing adverts because they're transmitting complicated ideas and very simple images that everyone will remember.
So he's accepting the mission, basically. He's gonna move on as the hero. He's reborn, he's cleansed, he goes through this transformation stage, which involves just extreme acupuncture. At one point, the guy's got 500 needles in him.
Yes.
He gets onto Morpheus's hovercraft, sort of reminds you a little bit of the Millennium Falcon or something like that. And their outside world is decidedly like rustic and low tech. The Earth as it is seems to have been destroyed by war. It's really unlivable on the surface. But they're living in this interestingly low tech or retro hovercraft compared to the Matrix, which is clean and looks like our modern world. He learns that machines are kind of in control of humans and that they actually grow us and cultivate our energies to power themselves. So they're sort of keeping us alive in these primordial stew pods and just sucking us for energy and life. But that Neo, they think, is the second coming of a savior. He's going to free the humans. There's just so much religiosity in this film. The Zion is the homeland for the people waiting to return to the normal world. We've got Trinity as one of the characters' names. There's a Judas character I'll talk about here in a little moment. Lots of religion. There's an oracle as well. So they're sort of doing the hodgepodge of religious thought and putting it in there for symbolism and storytelling purposes. This crew of revolutionaries, they've been sort of waiting for Neo, and now they've got him. They're using the Matrix. They're training him using the Matrix. So we talked about the training scene in Everywhere All at Once. Similarly here, they're using the Matrix. He's literally learning Taekwondo and karate in seconds and sort of getting that programmed into his mind. The midpoint comes, and he's been taken to the Oracle, who I think says, "Open your eyes, free your mind." So a lot of these same themes about being a slave.
Yeah.
And they're iterated throughout. So I mean, I think they do a pretty good job of really hammering their messages home in this film. It turns out that Smith is like a sentient program. They're the monsters inside the Matrix. They're sort of gatekeepers. The actual machines that control the humans are really weird. They're like enormous, not like a squid, but almost like a swimming firefly or something like that.
Robot octopus.
They're scary. They're large. They seem to be large because at one point they're on top of the hovercraft, and but it seems like the hovercraft was actually, I think, in their sewer systems. Did I get that right? They're like floating around in the sewer systems.
I think so. Like this kind of some kind of big underground tunnels. I don't know whether they specify, but
so they're flying around, exploring things, and I guess really mostly hiding from the machines. And then sort of a Judas character, the Cypher character, is going to betray Neo. It's classic biblical stuff, and turn him over. He wants to, I don't know what the machines are promising him, but there's this scene where Smith is saying, you'll have a great life. And the Matrix can be fantastic. It's just illusion. You can, he's talking about eating steaks, delicious steaks. He can do whatever he wants in the Matrix, but he will be a slave. So he's sort of trading this idea that he has of freedom with Morpheus's group for just living well in the Matrix. And then there's one thing that really bugged me was all this time wasted on is he or isn't he questions of Neo's authenticity. It happens through the first 2/3 of the film, really. They're still not sure if he's the one, so they're trying to put that out there. But it's Keanu Reeves in the film. Of course he's the one.
Of course he's the one.
So I was a little irritated by that because it was like this false drama. Morpheus sacrifices himself for Neo. More biblical stuff, I'd say. He's the god of sleep and dreams, is Morpheus in the myth world. Right. Lots of martial arts, lots of gunfire, and then Morpheus ends up being captured. The machines are probing him for intelligence because they want to bring down Zion. I guess Zion's a threat because these are free humans underground trying to take over, like reclaim Earth or reclaim their own civilization. Neo at this point is outside the Matrix. He wants to go back into the Matrix to rescue Morpheus. Trinity insists on going along. Which begged me to think, if the Matrix is so fake, why is there real pain and real human agency in it? That bugged me. It's like if you get punched in the Matrix, you feel it through your wiring into the real world. Or if you bleed, you might start spitting up blood in your real world, even though that thing happened to you in the Matrix. So just didn't rub me the right way. I don't think it felt like if
Right.
you're in the Matrix, you should just be in the Matrix. You would, I think, lose consciousness. It seems like these guys have figured out a way to maintain consciousness when they're in the Matrix, but that doesn't do the physical thing. I can't imagine blood coming through your
Yeah, they
body
kind of
because you're connected.
they dismiss it slightly with by some kind of chin strokey comments about how the mind can't the body can't survive without the
Yeah,
mind. If you're hurt there, you're hurt here. Yeah, I see what you mean.
yeah,
I was happy to accept the rules because they'd explained the rules. So I was
yeah,
happy just to kind of to go along with it because I felt like the people making the film knew what the rules
yeah.
were and they'd explained to me what the rules were and I was happy to
They
accept
give you a line
it. It
of
was just
dialogue.
part of my suspension
Yeah,
of disbelief.
good work. Um, so the question was like, do we have any agency as humans? I thought that might be one of the messages that they're trying to get at is that we might think we can do stuff, but then we might choose not to do stuff, or we really can't change anything because these other machines, higher powers, are really at play here. Smith calls humans a virus, a plague, and the machines are the cure. That was pretty crazy. Good connection to the other film, I thought, in terms of we're simple and stupid people. Okay, I think the problem that in terms of I can't take this film out of 1999. It's
Right.
so these guys look great when they pick up guns. They've got the glasses on, the long jackets. They make killing look really cool. And it sort of sells the violence and the acrobatics and the guns and lots of guns. So that's the thing that I can't take away is because it had a definite effect on this one pair of kids who went
Real
out
people.
and just wreaked tremendous violence on totally innocent people. So I can't take it out of that because that is definitely they look fantastic. It's really sexy killing. There's lots of stuff blowing up and they're doing crazy kung fu moves and flips during it all and avoiding bullets, but it's definitely super violent. There's one scene where I thought they were trying to rescue Morpheus, but they were shooting up that office so bad. I don't see how he didn't take a bullet in that barrage. But he breaks his chains. It's a very, very sort of big moment. And he runs right into Neo's arms. He saves him. They helicopter him out of there. And so a couple of Neo ends up getting in trouble with Agent Smith and getting beat up really badly, and he's almost dead. And then it's this moment just killed me. This is when Trinity kisses Neo in their real world on the hovercraft, and that brings him back to life in the Matrix. And there's a lot of corny love language there, but she saves him with this kiss, even though they haven't kissed in real life yet. And then Neo manages to defeat the machines in the Matrix. He's definitely the one now. He's shown just amazing martial arts skills, and he's using his mind to like stop bullets and stuff like that. So he's the one. I knew that earlier in the film, but they found out later.
I knew him before he was the one.
Yeah. And oh God, one of my favorite lines was "There is no spoon." That's when they're going. He's learned this from a child who's using his mind to move things or make them disappear or realize that they're not there in the first place. I think they're using the elevator as some sort of counterbalance to bring them up, and they're on this. They're basically rappelling up, I suppose. And he says, "There is no spoon," and then they just zoom up to the top, ready to kick ass up there. And then the last scene seemed like a setup for the future things. He's back in the Matrix, I think. He's ready to like disturb things anew. He's got the glasses on, the long leather coats, and he can fly now. So he's obviously going to be instrumental in saving the Earth again and again. So that's long-winded, I suppose, but there's a lot here. Not nearly as much as Everyone Everywhere. It's quite a simple story. It's really quite focused, I think. So I give them props for that. And just tremendous like acrobatics and fight scene choreography. There was one thing about the choreography that hit me wrong. It felt dated somehow. And I think it was because it was the choreography is really strong, and then the camera style, the cinematography, and that style is really, really strong. And as a result, it felt really slow. So it felt kind of dated and stiff somehow. Like it's obviously they had rehearsed the fight scenes a bunch, but then they're also cut in such a way that fast cuts actually kind of slow it down somehow for me. It was very strange. So And it's at a point where they're really putting all their chips in on this being a fight film. I mean, this is basically a martial arts film, for probably the third act and earlier parts as well. So they're really putting their chips in on it, and it felt a little dated and a little stiff to me. And I don't know if you felt that way, but it obviously influenced the industry thereafter.
It did. I mean, one of the little remarks I wrote down thinking about this film was that after Die Hard came out in 1988, Hollywood spent 10 or 11 years basically remaking Die Hard, and we got every version of Die Hard. We got Die Hard on a boat, Die Hard on a bus, Die Hard on an aeroplane. Everything was Die Hard until The Matrix, and then The Matrix was such a turning point that then we've had another 10 or more years after The Matrix of people then remaking The Matrix. And it was so influential, and that whole kind of bullet time, guns and martial arts kind of feel then seemed to crop up in so many films. And it seemed to be so very, very influential. It doesn't feel like it took until I think the Marvel movies, sort of overtook the box office before we've started to see films that aren't quite so directly lifted from The Matrix.
Sure.
I can exactly see how living in the US and seeing this film at the time that you did would really colour your experience. Watching this film in Europe, where thankfully we don't have a great deal of gun crime. I think this film is perfectly shaped.
Okay.
It hits all the marks. It's like I think anybody who wanted to learn how to write a film could do a lot worse than sitting down and watching The Matrix and write down what happens in every scene, because it's so very, very tightly structured. I think it's it's like a textbook, I think. And I think it's a great example of something which I remember you telling me years ago, which is if you fail to prepare, then prepare to fail. That it's been very meticulously prepared, this film. Reading up about the production, I think the Wachowskis found it so hard to explain to people what it was they wanted to do that they paid to comic artists that they worked before to do a 600-page storyboard.
Oh, wow.
And it's an extremely detailed storyboard of the entire film from the start to the finish. And you can see pages of this online. It's a very detailed, high-quality piece of work. And you can tell that I think they took this storyboard and they shot what was on the storyboard, and they knew exactly where they were going to put the camera and what they were going to do and how they were going to light it, before they got onto set. So I think the film really has that feel of being extremely tightly controlled. Everything happens for a reason. Nothing has been improvised. Nothing has been worked out at the last minute. There's no lucky coincidences or happy accidents. They knew exactly what they were going to do, and they did exactly the thing that said on the paper. And in this case, because it was so meticulously planned, you've ended up with a meticulous film. There's a whole bunch of themes and motifs that kind of come in again and again and again. That this kind of they riff on to dreams and waking. They fetishize telephones, the color green. There's this kind of visual motif of falling water and falling drops that comes up again and again and again. And once
Falling
you start
bullets.
looking for it, absolutely. So it's stitched tightly into every opportunity where they can present it. It's a very, very dense, internally reflective, meticulous, detailed, planned out movie. And I think that is a lot of the reason of why I find it so watchable. Every time I've seen it, and I think I've seen this film 7 or 8 times now, every time I see it, I spot a new detail that I didn't realize was there last time. Just watching it, I watched it this afternoon before doing the pod, and I recognized that the scene where Keanu Reeves has to, for the first time, he does the jump program where he jumps from one building to another. And all the people watching saying, oh, he's not going to make it. And he doesn't make it and he falls down. And then at the end of the movie, when he has to rescue Morpheus, and Morpheus is running out of the building to jump into the helicopter, and then Keanu Reeves says, he's not going to make it. I'm going to have to catch him. That I'd never noticed that, that little parallel before. Then the film will still be full of dozens of other details that I won't have spotted before. So I think from that point of view, it's a masterclass. I do think, though, for the first time, I think we ought to have a regular slot on this pod, which is called "Are We the Baddies?" Because this is, I think, it's another film where I've got to the end and I thought, did the heroes in this film actually do anything good? You know, come the end of the film, as far as people who are citizens of the Matrix are aware, Keanu Reeves and his guys have just turned up and killed an awful lot of people and destroyed an awful lot of property. You know, and they've kind of managed to rescue their buddy, and one of them has learned how to fly. But overall, they haven't improved the quality of life for anybody in the Matrix. They've just messed things up terribly.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a great shift of perspective for you to start to think, you know what, actually, maybe Keanu Reeves and his gang, for all them wearing the cool clothes and having the cool moves and doing the martial arts and having these very quotable little lines of dialogue, for all the great stuff, yeah, these guys are probably actually the baddies, and they're not necessarily a force for good, not within this film. The people who are trapped in the Matrix, well, don't seem terribly unhappy. You know, if we believe the conceit of the film, then the people who are trapped in the Matrix are just like you and me. Yeah. I'm not sure that we're crying out to be rescued and dragged out to live in a hovercraft in a sewer where we have to eat slop from a tube.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe Keanu and his gang, they are the baddies.
I liked so much of what you said about preparation, because it does feel really prepared. And I really sympathize with them, because I know they worked, jobs that they probably didn't want to be working, painting and laboring, but they had this dream going, and they really worked on it in terms of like refining it with all these elements of myth and mythology and religion. It becomes sort of stronger and stronger. So it's definitely a well-prepared film. It's a well-executed film. And I love a lot of the themes. I mean, I love this idea of these other creatures controlling our minds, which, that's sort of like the really big idea. But it's interesting that they use so much religion about it, because I think of God as being the same sort of thing, controlling us, and even if it's divided into lots of different religions. So I love that idea, and I think they do a pretty good job of that. And it might get a little frustrating hearing the same messages come out in dialogue again and again, but their messages are very clear, I think. So I respect that about the film for sure, and I'm glad you talked about that level of preparation. I think at times, there's this fine line where it becomes too prepared to the point where doesn't feel very spontaneous. It doesn't feel like there are a lot of really new and totally different ideas in there. But I do love that idea of other beings having control. And I think ultimately the more realistic theme that comes out is that, and I think we suffer more from it now, is just this being ruled by technology to a certain extent, or being ruled by corporate overlords who are just distracting us with crap while there's some insidious stuff happening in the background, and great stuff. And I think that comes through pretty strong. That the creatures themselves, I thought, were kind of strange, but hey, it's this kind of sci-fi, I don't know, Art Deco sci-fi thing going on, and it works pretty well.
The production design is good. Yeah. I think it's fine. I do agree that the obvious interpretation of the theme seems to me. I don't know. I see the whole world through this kind of studenty Marxist lens, but to me it feels like it's a story about the ideals of Marxism, isn't it? Because it's about freeing the proletariat, and it's about having superiors who control you and then use the fruits of your labor. They literally use your energy, gradually sucking the life out of your body for their own purposes. So it does seem very kind of Marxy, but there's something sort of generic enough about the way the story is presented that you can kind of turn it into a metaphor about almost any struggle or any truth. Yeah, which perhaps is why it's been popular with the right, and it's been popular with a lot of different ideologies. It has that strength a little bit like the Bible, where it's vague enough that you can use it to back up almost any idea.
And 23 years later, who would have thought we'd still be wrestling with these machines? I guess probably predictable. I hope they're not those big octopus things, but. We are still doing battle. So I think it's, it's wonderful in the sense that they also managed to look forward, I think, quite a bit in terms of like the internet in particular, which was pretty young at that time, 99. I mean, I figure they're writing this in 95, 96, where the internet's barely a thing. And you do have those images of, we're stuck in these falling digits, all this sort of binary code kind of in green falling from the sky and all those other rain kind of images. Like, we're in it.
Yeah,
we're definitely in it. I think they do a good job with those sorts of images and that feel that there's something out of our control, and we can either look at it, open our eyes and see it for what it's worth, or we can just live blissfully in it, the ignorance.
And continue to spend. Famously, I think Will Smith was approached to be Neo before Keanu Reeves took the role. And I wonder what the film would have turned out like if Will Smith had been Neo, and whether we would still be talking about it now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a very watchable actor, but he's very different to Keanu.
Keanu already feels so stilted in so many ways to me. He's not like a natural actor where he just seems comfortable. More or less seems like he's living his own caricature somehow. And so a lot of the fight scenes where he's sort of stepping into position felt really awkward to me. I mean, obviously worked really hard and trained really hard, but it never seems quite natural for me. He's got the great looks. He's got the voice, but it's funny. He still never feels to me totally comfortable in that role. So I think maybe Will Smith would have been a bit more natural, because just a little cooler. Like, Keanu's already cool, so when he's playing cool, it's almost like it cancels his cool. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's funny. The Matrix has kind of defined the whole of the rest of Keanu's career, hasn't it? Now,
yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Now that he's doing kind of John Wick, it's just sort of Neo wearing a different hat. It's very influential film. I think still very watchable film. Yeah, but a film that also carries a heavy legacy, which is probably worth remembering.
Yeah.
I haven't shown my children The Matrix. I wonder whether it's still a little bit too violent for a 12 and a 14-year-old. There is quite a lot of violence in this film, and it's right up there in your face.
It is. And to a certain extent, it's a dangerous violence because you've got these mythical figures who are trained, and you've got these sentient programs. So no one dies. There's very little blood actually in this film. And people sort of seem you can take on a new personality. So it has this sort of, again, it's almost a Christian thing, this life after death feel. Like, there's no such thing as really dying. And
it's consequenceless.
People don't really die when they get shot up like that. So I think that's kind of a dangerous dangerous violence because there are no consequences to it.
Yeah, that is true, isn't it? Well, I think The Matrix, still an interesting film to watch. Has a slightly different flavor in 2022 than it did in 1999.
Yeah. I was glad to go back and see it. I mean, it had literally been probably 23 years since I saw it, and it was good to go back and see it again. I haven't seen it 6 or 7 times like yourself, and I probably won't see it again, but it was good to see and good to appreciate the strong elements in it, I think. So I would say I think both of these films are worth seeing. I probably won't watch them again. That's my taste, but I think if you dig at it a little bit, you can really pull out some good themes and good lessons from each film.
Yeah, if you're going to watch everything everywhere all at once, wait until you can get it like a home version, so you can watch it at half speed. Slow it down to the speed of human thought.
Yeah, it'll only be 4 hours then, but you'll understand it.
Yeah, spread it out over 4 evenings. Right, this has been the Two Real Cinema Club. We're coming back into the real world here. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you for the next episode. Thanks and goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Open your eyes.